You're listening to Nurture Your Zest. I'm your host, Ashleigh King, and I will introduce you to a wealth of interesting, fascinating individuals from all walks of life who will share their stories, how they've overcome challenges, and you will find out their top tips for success. Through this podcast, you can gain tips to grow and change your life and the way you see the world, and help you to nurture your zest. Hello and welcome to Nurture Your Zest. Today I have a very special episode for you. I'm joined by the fantastic Luke, who wears many hats, does lots of things, and you'll hear more about him. But I'm just so excited to have you with me today, Luke. So who are you?
Ashleigh, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Luke Shalmon. You might know me from running music events in town. I've been living in Newcastle now for about 9 years. Started off basically when I was at university running club events. We did this little night called Boom Shack, and then that later evolved into doing Days Newcastle, which is all centered around after hours club parties in alternative clubbing spaces. So we did events ranging from at like the Baltic Centre for Contemporary Art. We were the first people to do selection of parties. They're first and last because they've now stopped people doing the events of Revolution to Cuba, all the way through to various terraces in town. But also on the side of that as well, like I'm quite interested in human psychology as well. Sort of like been doing a podcast where we're studying the lives of like world-class top performers to help guys to become future-proof. So we talk about the topics like self-development, mindset, all the way through to, spirituality. And that's sort of been maybe where the interests have been pivoting a little bit more now as I'm, I guess, getting a little bit old to be out at all hours of the night running club events still.
Well, I mean, what age is too old to go to club events? I've seen people in their 60s having a good rave.
Very true. But I am more comfortable now going home at 10 p.m. with a nice mug of Horlicks, and I'll be up at like 6 a.m. That for me is like my new level of normal. Gone are the days of being out at all hours.
I find that so funny. I can totally resonate with maybe not wanting to go clubbing all the time anymore. But I have to say, I went to a festival. I went to Kidstock Festival just this weekend gone, and had an amazing time. Just it's been so long since I've been in a festival environment or been out exploring music with people, and just it is the music, but it's that feeling of just being outdoors in nature with people and the buzz around stuff. And I mean, you get that as well with a nightclub, but I think you're right, it can get a bit repetitive at times. I'm not sure I'm ready for like 10 p.m. bedtime and Horlicks. I love Horlicks. I just mean like I'm a 3 a.m. kind of creative spark kind of person. That's when I'm most creative. So for me, 10 is when I'm coming alive. So I find it fascinating how different we all are, because 6 a.m. is when I'm ready for sleep. So it's like such a different view. So are you kind of like 5 a.m. sort of club, 6 a.m. club kind of guy?
What, like Robin Sharma vibes?
Yeah, sort of getting up.
Honestly, I have tried a myriad of different like routines, techniques, like for the last like 2 years, been fairly into the likes, like Tony Robbins, Tim Ferriss, all this, and tried everything under the sun. I tried the 5:30. It absolutely ruined me, and I never did it again. So I settled on about 7 a.m. That is about how early I'm able to get up without being completely ruined for the workday. Like, shout out to the people that can do that, but I just can't do it. When did you find out that was how you actually worked better?
It was during the pandemic. Yeah. Well, actually, so pre-pandemic, what happened for me was it would be midnight and I'd be getting my glue gun out and like doing handmade cards and like using fabric and like creating like, I don't know, like upcycled stuff around my house, decoupaging things and just doing the most mad stuff at like midnight. And then it's just so many times I was waking up at like 3 a.m. With poems and just like ideas and like just dreams of stuff I wanted to do. And so, I mean, it was kind of annoying at first. So I just played on my phone and scrolled on my phone. But that's just such a waste of time, I found, because it was like I was wasting creativity, wasting time, but I also just felt tired. And, you know, I was like tired, but frustrated. I couldn't sleep. So actually what I spent my time doing was listening to true crime podcasts or like watching documentaries on Netflix at like 3 a.m. So now if I wake up, I just get up and like journal or something, or, you know, do something creative, do some like coloring in or something to kind of use that creativity and tire myself and then go back to bed.
Oh, 100%. Like I have this thing as well. I don't know if it's the way that our brains are wired, right? But if I have an idea that's going in my head and it will churn and churn and churn and churn, like, I mean, an idea that I'm excited about, it could also be something that I might be concerned about. That's another thing that's going to like,
you can hyper focus on
exactly,
things.
But I'll be like, so like at 4:30 this morning, I woke up and I was thinking, oh, there's a project that I'm literally about to launch, like within the next couple of weeks, which will be getting released shortly. But I was thinking, I could do this certain thing for this, like to get people in the funnel to build that brand. But what I'm talking about is when you have something in your head that almost needs to be like expressed until it is out there, like launched, it's almost like it becomes uncomfortable because I have to just get down and execute it or even just write it down.
Oh my
gosh. To
gosh.
get it out. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean because I have this, and you know, we've talked about ADHD before. Yeah. I have this, and you know, when we opened Flamingo Heights, we'd come to see the space on the 8th of August, right? We were in 6 weeks later, and 6 weeks later we opened, and it was just an empty shell. So when you look around the room and the space now, there was literally like some small bits of decor from my house, but everything else I had to find, I had to upcycle, I had to paint, I had to scrub, you know, and there was a lot of work to do. And what I'm trying to say there is just the amount that you can get done in a like 6 week window or whatever is just bananas, right? But you literally live, sleep and breathe it. You know, like I get so excited about creative projects that I forget to eat, I forget to sleep, I forget to go to the toilet, I just forget to shower. I mean, it's just bananas. I just don't know how. Do you resonate? So
there's a really interesting story to this. I'm sure if my housemate Alex is watching this now, whenever we would sit there and like produce music, I remember I was making an EP for like, I think I was making an EP for this Welsh label called Floor Piece. And over the period of the time when I was making that EP, which actually went on to become like, got a global #1 on Beatport, which was incredibly just shocked at. But slight flex, but bring it back on to point. It was about over that course of time, making the music in that sort of like full on creative, like when you're in flow, you get to the end of the day and you'd feel like your body was just completely broken. And you're like, I haven't been to the toilet. I haven't drank anything. I haven't eaten food. I feel like I'm about to pass out, but I finished a couple of tracks. Worth it.
And were they amazing?
I thought I liked them. I liked them enough to send off.
Yeah. So I do find though that often those times are what produces the best work, just the way my brain works. Although I'm trying really hard to be more measured now. And, you know, the things you're saying, like having your holics, getting some sleep, breathing, journaling, like for me, it's always been fast, you know, and I'm learning to kind of go with things a little slower. It's funny though, because I'm not actually on my ADHD meds at the moment. It's not on purpose. It's just a case that there's a massive shortage nationally of getting the medication that I use. And so it's great because when I'm on them, I'm so organized. Like, and I can't stop organizing. I went on holiday to Ibiza early in the year and I literally couldn't stop tidying. It was driving Paul, my husband, crazy. So it's like, I don't know why. I mean, I know why, because that's what they're there for. They're there to stimulate your focus and attention. But what I do find as a creative is it might mean that I have 300 ideas or like hundreds of ideas. And I just don't know what, when I'm on the meds, I can think through what I need to do. I can organize the steps. I know what needs to be done. But having not been on them now for like 2 weeks, I am so manic. Like I'm losing things. I've been forgetful. But I'm loving it. Like I'm waking up every morning happy. So before I felt like, yes, I could organize things, but I just felt like I lost my sparkle a bit, or I felt a bit numb. And sure, certain things were easier, but now life's a bit more chaotic being off them again. But my creativity is through the roof and I'm loving that. So it's so fascinating to see.
Maybe you've got to cycle it then to play it to your advantage.
Yeah, I think so. You get some people who just don't take meds on the weekends because they want to enjoy their true self, you know. So it's just an interesting thing.
That's really sad though, that's that trade-off.
Well, yeah.
In society, people who have ADHD or like neurodivergent disorders are having to make that choice between, do I have a life where I'm able to function and perform like a normal, well, quote unquote normal, is there such a thing anyway, but like be functioning with like high executive functioning to be able to show up and do a job and remember that you haven't left a pizza in the oven for about 40 hours while you're doing your creative work and the house is burned down. You want to avoid that
yes, you
if
do.
possible, but also like making that choice to on the weekend to be themselves and not take the medication. I think it's really challenging, and it's something that as well. I actually do think I have ADHD, and we've spoken about this
so many times.
Well,
there's a book. So I think ADHD. There's a lot of, some people call it a superpower. Some people are like it's a massive disability.
Yeah.
I think I'm moving away. I love to talk about ADHD. I get so many messages every day from people who are neurodiverse. And, you know, like you said, we've had loads of chats about it. But I think it's important to have support groups and support structures around you. What I don't want to do, though, is become a label. So I've realized recently, you know, I've done my NLP coaching recently. And one of the things that I learned is just how powerful our minds can be when we train it, you know, when we work with our minds and like when we feed it the right stuff, when we clean up our mess, our things that are going on, we can be so much more powerful than we've ever been.
Yeah.
And that's why I think this time, you know, there's been a couple of times I've not been on my meds in the past, but I just feel so empowered. I'm waking up happy and feeling good. And I think it's just because I've worked so hard to like sort out a lot of stuff in my life. So I think it's important not to just become a label or just to surround yourself with, I think support systems are good, but, you know, I think it's about taking responsibility too, because sometimes if we just say, oh, well, it's just because of this or it's just because of that, you don't really give yourself the opportunity. Like, I want to be better organized. I want to be the best version of myself. So that means I need to turn up for an appointment on time or, you know, all these different things. But what I wanted to say there is I wanted to talk about this book that I love. It's called ADHD, Hunter in a Gatherer's World. So it's this whole idea about there's a connection with the hunters, the ADHD kind of hunters needed to be alert. They needed to be awake often late at night to be able to watch and check patrols and make sure that, you know, things were safe and they were like look out for predators and prey and stuff. So you often find with a lot of people who have ADHD, they are policemen or in emergency rooms or they're very good in those situations because they're fast responders, you know, so they're like quite fast-paced lifestyles. So, you know, I know, for instance, I struggle with yoga. I mean, I can see the value in it and I have enjoyed it in the past, but I would rather go like to kickboxing or go for a run. I want to do something really energizing or like an aerobics class or something like that. I would rather go raving for like 3 days and and be in a field sweating than go to a yoga class. But that's just my personal preference. So, and then the interesting thing is when you look at this book I was talking about, if you look at the kind of the gatherers, they had to be more organized. They had to plan for crops. They had to learn about irrigation, think about flooding. They had to adjust, you know, or remember where things were and where particular, you know, foods and foraging areas were. And so we developed a different way of doing things. And so I think sometimes you talked earlier about, isn't it so sad that there's a trade-off that people feel they have to give a part of themselves away to be, say, normal? But I think the point is, what is normal anyway, and who made the rules? And it's something I'm working through at the moment, but I always enjoy our chats. They could go on so many different levels, but I want to bring it back to you. I want to ask about your mind. What's going on in there? But also spiritual. Well, yeah. So we'll come back to spirituality later, but
sure.
Let's come back to Luke's mind. What's going on in there?
Well, where do I start? Where do you want me to start?
I mean, we've spoken a bit about ADHD there, but take that away. You've talked about hyper-focusing. You've talked about, getting so lost in a project, having creative bursts, creative output.
Yeah.
What's it like for you as a creative who's doing different things? So making tracks, running events, you're a podcaster, you're a content creator, but then also going through dips up and down with, your mental health or like, what's it like inside Luke's head? Because it sounds like it's been pretty noisy, but you've still got a job, you're doing all these things. So what's going on for you?
Okay, so I'm gonna put this to a quote. I can't remember who said it, but it's from a guy that wrote a book called ADHD 2.0, and I was actually listening to this today, and he said if I was to have ADHD or some form of neurodivergent disorder, or I know it's a broad spectrum, described that the way that brain is set up, it is like a Ferrari with bicycle brakes. And I thought that frames it in the most perfect way possible. Sometimes in my life, I feel like I'm driving ahead as when I have a mission or a why or a creative project that I can build, or maybe sales that I'm like chasing after because I work in tech sales as well. Those are the points where I feel fully aligned with who I am, and I will go after it like I'm running on a racetrack, and just momentum begets momentum, and I will feel really good. But when I almost stop still, and I'm like, okay, Luke, like we're going on holiday, you need to take some break, take a break, or do you know what I mean? Like spend time with maybe like friends and family for extended periods, which doesn't involve quote unquote building things or creative work or being productive. It gets quite, intense, because I don't really have much chill in that regard. My only chill of the day comes where I will commit to doing a meditation every day for about 20 minutes. And that is about the only time where I'm never not doing anything. That's it.
Oh my God, this is so helpful for me to hear, because I'm just thinking back to that holiday in Ibiza earlier in the year. So
what happened?
Well, no, so I mean, like I was like swimming 20 lengths a day, or like maybe 4 times a day, or like I needed to like organize the room, or I needed to go for a walk around the city and go and explore, or go and look at stores, or I was desperate to go to like the clubs or whatever, or needed to just go and do stuff. Even lying by the pool, I lay by the pool for like 8 hours every day for like 5 days, and it was amazing. I really loved the vitamin D and the sunshine. But Paul's lying there just, listening to his headphones, and like that's what he'll do. Like he's really chill, and maybe scroll at his phone. I'm writing like poems, I'm writing chapters of books, I'm getting up and swimming. I'm like playing games on my phone and listening to music and reading books. I read 3 books on holiday and 5 magazines, and it's just like that whole thing of what you said about zero chill. I just don't get how people chill. Like, what is that?
I think it comes back to like the way that maybe some brain you could. I don't. The label of ADHD is challenging in itself, because I feel like it is a little bit. In the media, it's always displayed in almost like a bit of a negative, like attention deficit. It's not a deficit of attention. There is a massive wealth of attention, but when you're interested in the thing, do you know what I mean?
Yes,
there's no deficit.
It's like
it just it comes and it goes. It's the Ferrari with bicycle brakes.
Yeah.
It veers off path occasionally and crashes into a few shops, and then you've got to steer around, take it to garage and fix it up.
It's the impatience, isn't it?
Lack of it's always searching for stimulation. And as long as you're on that stimulation train, you're always going to be like looking for that next bump, the next bit of dopamine. And that explains why even when you're on holiday, you want to be being productive, because it's how your brain is wired.
Yeah.
And I think you can either fight against it and be sort of like find it challenging and self-deprecating about it, or you can just accept like this is a feature of my personality, and it can be a superpower, but you just need somebody to be like, listen.
But it just
Ashleigh,
means
you need to chill out.
You
need to stop.
Exactly. But it just means that, for instance, you can so for me, chilling would be like we went to the hippie market and we looked at all these cool stalls, and like we explored the old town, and we went to the beach, and like that to me is chilling. So like everyone's different. I mean, sometimes I'll chill and play with a puzzle or something. I mean, that's a great way to chill, like I like to solve puzzles, but I just mean like, it's fascinating. I think people are fascinating. And I mean, what's your kind of journey with mental health? So, I mean, we've talked a bit about ADHD, but mental health specifically, anxiety, depression, just like being all these things that you are.
That's a really good question. And that would have many, 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 many different answers. So I'll give you the in a nutshell approach. I think being at university, it's a bit of a catalyst for anything to come out. Like you're working very, very long hours in the library. You're trying to maintain like a social network of friends. You aren't around your normal support network, right? And I think that almost becomes a breeding ground for things like anxiety, depression, anything like OCD to come out. And I finished university and I felt utterly burnt out. Like I didn't feel up to getting a professional job, so I went and moved back home, and I just was working at a restaurant, but I wasn't in the greatest of places. Like I felt very anxious, I felt very depressed, and it was almost like I think there's almost that realization there of you've been in that bubble of university for so long, and then when it's not there anymore, it's like a huge part of your life is gone, and there's just a vacuum. And what if there's no meaning that has filled that vacuum, then I think that's where you're going to see your anxiety, your depression, those unmet needs, the expectations of what you thought life would be like when you finish uni. It wasn't as I thought it would be. Like I didn't go off and have a career like in music as I wanted at the time. I wasn't quite in the best of like mental health states, So, but I feel like something for me that I have found like very challenging over the years for like 5 years from the age of like 20, yeah, like 18 to 25 was I didn't really have that much struggle with depression, had my odd time of being like finding it very challenging, but anxiety was always something that I just could never unpick. But maybe that becomes with the duality of our sorts of personalities because we're always like like on the go, like high alert a lot of the time. So maybe my base state for many years was just this underlying feeling of dread that just would never let go. Like like a tense feeling in the chest. Even when you were at rest, like going into work, feeling like being in I was working a recruitment job at the time, heading up like the recruitment for a tech consultancy. I used to have to like be sat there in literal job interviews, like feeling like I was about to have a panic attack and like having to sort of like keep it chill and just like let it go. But I think unpicking that, I'm realizing that a lot of the time, the things that perpetuate anxiety, mental health is more often than not, either we are the summation of our habits and the beliefs we hold about ourselves. And that was only sort of discovered from sort of thousands of hours of reading books to do with CBT, thousands of pounds of going to like actual therapy to do with CBT and treating anxiety, to then realizing coming at the end of it that nobody's coming to save you, right? I always used to wish for that someday when I would have like stable mental health. And it always used to be something that was just like a yellow brick road on the horizon that just never seemed reachable until I realized that nobody was going to do it for me. And it was almost like this paradigm shift where I just stopped identifying as an anxious person. And it sounds really cheesy and almost that wouldn't work framing it like that. But for so many years, surrounded by like my school friends, like my parents, even like grandparents when I was younger, they'd be like, "Oh, Luke, you're an overthinker, you're a worrier," and it'd be like, "No, like maybe that isn't me anymore. Maybe that is not something that I'm willing to settle for." And it was, look, I am experiencing anxiety, but I am not anxiety, and it was so crazy that as that was drummed into over a period of time, picking up healthy habits like regular exercise, went sober for an entire year, stopped drinking entirely, but was sort of drumming into that mindset of these are feelings that I experience in my body, but they are not me. Now it's literally been 2 years since I've had constant anxiety, and I haven't had a panic attack in a year. Like I literally don't have anxiety anymore. It's the most profound, crazy like thing that has happened. And I think it all rooted back to just realizing that it really just comes down to like your perception of situations and what you're willing to believe about yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, that's all really, really valuable stuff you're sharing there and powerful stuff, and I'm intrigued. So, you know, when we go through stuff in our mental health, we often, like you said at uni, in some ways vulnerable because we don't have our usual support systems, but we're also learning to manage money for some people for the first time ever. We've got all these other challenges. We're managing deadlines. We're getting ourselves from A to B. It's a huge learning curve. And it's one of the reasons why a lot of people look back at their university time as really special or really difficult, depending on what their circumstances were. However, another thing that happens is we meet people, right? We have relationships, and sometimes those relationships don't always go so well. And what I was going to say with that is, I think one of the things I've been reading about, I've been thinking about so much, and like you, I love to read, I love to learn more about myself, and I love to learn more about the human brain and people. And it's given me a great deal of compassion for people that I've dated in the past, or relationships or friendships that didn't work out, where in the past I felt a need to prove to them that I was special, or, like, why did they leave me, or whatever it was. But what I've come to realize is with a lot of people with a neurodivergence, there is something called rejection sensitivity dysphoria. Have you heard of that?
I haven't, but I can take a guess of what that is. An aversion to rejection.
It is, but you know what? It's so powerful, and it actually impacts everything from your behavior in the workplace to relationships. So it's a fear of being rejected, where you will people please, you'll stay in toxic friendships where it's not reciprocated. You don't feel safe in that environment, for whatever reason. You just can't end it. You can't walk away. You can't say no, and so you'll ruminate over things that didn't work out, things that didn't happen, and you'll want to prove that you're worthy. And so you'll do work for free, or you'll, all kinds of things. It's connected to so much. It might be useful to look into. But what I was going to say is, that whole journey around mental health and relationships, I think is really important. I actually would love to see more people talk about what it's really like going through some of that. I mean, it's kind of vulnerable stuff, right? But it is, I think, so much of it is interconnected with, when we're in a low place, when our mental health is poor, it's very easy to feel like you're not wanted or you're not loved. And actually, for the people around you, they do love you, but they can't reach you because you're in your own bubble or your own stuff, and it's so dark there, and it can be hard to break away from that. And I think that's where a lot of relationships break down as well. So it's interesting what you said earlier, no one's coming to save you. That resonates with me, because I felt like that at times. I felt like if I was with the right person, or looking for validation, or having my needs met, or whatever, or feeling lonely, and actually, if you're comfortable with yourself, and it's painful sometimes, but to sit with your own stuff and work through it, you actually become in a much better space to deal with all of that.
Yeah, it's almost like to fully, like the road out of chronic mental health is often through a baptism of fire, but internal fire, being comfortable to sit with those really, really uncomfortable emotions and just observe them for what they are. Like taking a deep breath, seeing how that feeling feels in the body, asking yourself sort of those questions, rather than just that autonomic response of just saying, I don't want to feel this anxiety, I don't want to feel this depression, let's push it away, let's get the phone out, scroll on Instagram, distraction activities. That's just making it worse further down the line, because we're not dealing with them. But when you can step into the fire, really feel it, it's going to be really uncomfortable, but that feeling over time starts to desensitize the brain's response to those physical emotions, and you can break those feedback loops.
But that's
anxiety,
it.
of depression.
It's feedback loops that you need to break, but it's dopamine chasing as well. I mean, people don't often think about
dopamine chasing.
Yeah.
What's that?
Well, when we chase dopamine, so there's so many ways you can get dopamine. So it's like, they're not all negative, but often they can be. So gambling, for instance, is a great way to get a hit of dopamine. Eating sweets, I love fizzy sweets. When I was really stressed doing my MBA, I would often eat loads of sweets, and I put on loads of weight because we weren't going anywhere. It was lockdown, and it was one of the ways I coped, or drinking energy drinks. Porn is a way to access dopamine, sending a text to someone you shouldn't, or, sometimes people do that with naughty snaps or just all kinds of things, I wasn't going to say spending, impulsive spending.
Yes.
It's a big one. It could be something little like buying yourself your favorite foods, or it could be like one of mine is buying flowers. I just, for some reason, buying flowers and having flowers around me gives me a buzz, right? Mm-hmm. But it could be people looking for dopamine through drugs, through sex, through alcohol. There's so many ways that we can numb ourselves. Social media, validation, posting things, getting likes. And so I think when we're chasing to kind of fill an empty space because we haven't dealt with stuff, it can be incredibly painful and we can feel stuck.
How does that link back to ruminating on anxiety and that being involved with dopamine chasing?
So I guess what I'm thinking there from my experience, and maybe this doesn't connect with yours, but it's about how we can sometimes get stuck in cycles and loops around ruminating on thoughts and past behaviors. Say, for instance, a past relationship that didn't work out or something like that, and constantly thinking, why did that happen? Why did that happen? Why didn't they want me? Or why did it not work?
Oh yeah. So many, the I'm not good enough programming loop runs on repeat. After any relationship.
I know, right. But then to numb that, so to get out of that I'm not good enough loop of thinking, you then drinking, you then, oh, well, if this hookup's going to take my mind off that for a little while, or if I'm going to go out and dance all night, or whatever it is, you just need a distraction. But sometimes you just need to feel the hurt and actually experience those emotions and let it go. One of the things that I find really useful about NLP is this idea that our unconscious mind is there to protect us. So its role is to store memories that are negative, actually, to protect us. And then what happens is when you're ready to deal with them, it will present them to you. And often that will be at a time when everything feels absolutely wonderful and fine. So it might be that you've got a new job and you're feeling really secure for the first time in ages. Exactly. It's like, hey, Luke.
Crushing self-doubt.
Yeah. Hey, Luke. I got my hand up here. There's this thing you haven't dealt with. And so what we can do is we can say, hey, thanks for that information. Now's not a good time. I'm in a meeting. It's like, okay, thanks, brain.
Go away.
But you kind of have to give it a bit of advice. Like, it listens to you, but you can say like, great that you came up. I respect that. But like, I'm actually like with this girl I really like right now. So don't want to be thinking about that. So can we schedule that in for like next Tuesday or next Sunday or whatever? Or like actually giving your mind the instruction to kind of hang fire a bit. You're overwhelming me here,
I love that. Talking to it like it's almost like a computer program.
It is. Yeah. But speaking of, we are trying already loads. Like I'm conscious of the time. So I want to know just any kind of things you want people to know about you. I mean, there's so much you do. We can put stuff in the show notes. We've talked a lot about mental health. We've talked a bit about music. Can you share a bit about spirituality?
Sure. I mean, that's quite a deep question in many senses, and it's something that I have definitely grappled with over the years. I used to be completely atheist. I didn't believe in any sort of God. And in many senses, I don't believe in like a structural religion sort of God. But I feel like in many senses, I do almost believe in a higher order of things, and I can't quite put my finger on it. But it's just those certain moments in like, maybe if you're in nature or if you're in like a state of flow and like doing creative work, it's almost just that, I don't know, I can't even explain it. It's like a presence. And I don't know if that's just like, that's just the brain, or if there is anything more. But I feel like it's a far more enchanting way to live one's life, knowing that maybe in some senses you are held, no matter what you're doing, no matter if things aren't going your way. Something has your back. And that could sound completely fanciful and stupid, but it certainly has given me so much more self-confidence and peace in myself, having that belief structure. So it works for me. It wouldn't work for everybody.
I think that's so true. Everyone needs to have their own belief structures, their own values, and the opportunity to believe what they want to believe. I think, so you've got like structured religions and faith, but I think just having something to believe in, to look forward to, a moral compass, a framework of how you live your life is so valuable.
100%, 100%. And it's something that like almost expanded on recently was, I don't know if you've heard of a guy called Joe Dispenza.
Yes.
So
yes.
The book Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. So I've basically read that book in the last couple of last month.
Yeah.
It was all about like I've often felt like manifestation, all of this universal consciousness. I always used to think it was a load of rubbish, and in some senses, I am still very, very, very skeptical of it. I almost feel like the more you see things, the more you're going to see them. Confirmation bias, right? But started doing these meditations where you're sort of becoming aware of your thoughts, of your body. Like in lengthened sessions where you're almost going to these trances in these meditation sessions. And he said, you're going to see evidence of this appear in your life, this work we're doing. I'm like, oh yeah, right. So that over this period of days, some pretty nuts stuff has happened. So I met a friend that I hadn't seen in 8 years when I was in London, getting on a random tube. He got on as I was with the girl I was dating.
Right.
And then a couple of days later, got asked to do a project, which is coming on the 13th of August, the last day's party ever, which is in collaboration with one of Newcastle's biggest clubbing brands, world headquarters in Apex. We've never really done anything with them ever in the past, so that was very, very unexpected. Then I had another meeting literally the other day about a project that I'm waiting to launch with a friend from LinkedIn. He was like, I've got an idea that I want to put past you, a business idea. And I was like, oh, I've got a business idea to tell you. We sit down in the meeting, he starts telling me about like this idea. It was exactly the same idea that I was about to reach out to him about. Like the same topics, the same ways of doing it. I don't want to give away any spoilers, but it was the same idea. So yeah, maybe I'm starting to become a little bit of a believer in this woo-wee hippie stuff. But that's my view on spirituality.
We'll do another podcast on that in the future. I'm very conscious of time, but that sounds fascinating, and I love anything around spirituality. So definitely a good chat. Okay, last question, very important one. What is your number one word? Oh, sorry, what is your number one way to nurture your zest?
Exercise. When I'm running and adrenaline's pumping around my body, I'm happy. I'm a greyhound.
I love it. I'm going to choose adrenaline. I just feel it's more fun than exercise.
Adrenaline. Yeah, that would
I'm a total adrenal junkie. But I have to say, adrenal fatigue is not fun.
Haven't experienced that yet.
Right. Yeah. It's hopefully that won't happen
That's
for you.
That's the next episode.
Anyway, we better sign it off there. But thank you so much for coming in today.
It was fantastic to chat, Ashleigh. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm looking forward to, watching it back.
You've been listening to Nurture Your Zest, and I've been your host, Ashleigh King. You can find us online on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Nurture Your Zest, as well as our website and YouTube channel. If you've liked our episode today, please give us a follow or leave a review or any comments. We love reading these. We look forward to catching up with you again soon as you learn to nurture your zest.